folks, welcome to this new video where we're going to be carrying on with the Blight-Hauler. So thank you for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell button if you don't want to see any more, if you want to continually see all of my uploads. And don't forget, at the end of the video you can find out all of my social media links. If you want to support the channel, you find Patreon down there, but peruse those at your leisure. Alright, so with that being said, we are going to have a look at the model itself, and this is where we're headed for this video. We move on to the fleshy bits and the tentacles, and we get some of those done and dusted out of the way. Alright, so that's where we're going, and if you want to have a glance over at what we're going to be using, is we're going to start with Rakarth Flesh. We need some Eldar Flesh dry paint. We're also going to need Balthazar Gold and Golden Griffin dry paint. We're also going to use Bugman's Glow, and the shades we're going to need in this video are Reikland Flesh Shade. We're also going to need Druchii Violet, Carroburg Crimson, and we're also going to need some Lamia Medium. Alright, so with that being said, that's where we're heading. So let's get cracking on with the model, shall we? Come on. And the first thing I'm going to do with this is I'm going to remove most of the bits from it. So I'll pop the pegs out from the base, just pop it off. Of course, moving on from the last video, you could just leave it separated if you're following along with these. I just like putting it back together at the end so that you can see it all. Alright, so I want to remove the front off of this. Now, I'm not too worried to keep removing these things. You know, I'm going to start rubbing off paint from the edges. I'm not too worried about that. Again, being a Nurgle model, I can use the scuffs of paint that are coming off to my advantage. You know, if this was a Space Marine model, if I needed it to be kept apart, I would keep it apart. But you know, I can do something with those later to add some weathering. So I'm going to take that off, and I'm also going to, oh, there we go, just remove this part as well. So that will come down here. There we go. Now we're aiming for the fleshy bits. Now there is some flesh on here and around here as well, so we just bear that in mind while we're painting. But of course the major part of the flesh is around about here, along these areas here. You can see where the armor comes on, where the wash settled in that gap there, so that kind of gives us a nice little area to aim to. So we're going to start off with most of these bits, which is where we come in with our first colour with Rakarth Flesh. Alright, so we're going to get on with that, and I'll grab my brush and we'll get started on adding some Rakarth Flesh just to these fleshy bits here. Now we do need to be careful, of course, around where the armor plates are. We don't want to be adding any paint to where those armor plates start, but with these bandings here we can go over those. They're not a problem, we don't need to worry too much about those, which we've left clear to do some brass towards the end. And likewise with these round areas here, they will be rusty metal as well. So we're just going to crack on with this and get this bit base coated. So if I just take a break halfway through this, and let me just show you this. So this is the one side done, and we do need to be careful. So like I said, these bits here, they're going to be done in metal, as are the bands down here. These tubes will do a different colour, even though they're kind of fleshy, but they're tentacly, so we'll pick those out in a different colour. And just bearing in mind, down here we have got some more that's going to be metal. I have gone over it, but it doesn't matter because we'll go over it again with metal. This is why you just need to make sure that your paint is nice and thin, so you don't start building paint up on there. There's a little bit of paint on there, but it's so thin, when we put another colour over, you're not going to notice. Alright, so we got the around here we've got some more tentacly bits here that we'll pick out again, and then down here we go into more metallics. Alright, the moor itself will probably do a deeper red kind of colour. So we'll leave that for now, and then so what we do, so that's what we've got so far, and then we do the same thing on the other side. Alright. Alright, so even though I said the more would be done a little bit later, now that I've done this I can kind of see roughly what we're looking at here. So I'm just going to bring the paint across the front here, and I apologise for not muting my phone and my computer. But we're coming over the top here. I'm not worried about too much on the inside, because that will definitely be more red than the outside. We'll just go along the top here, and then I just want to come across the bottom here, and I promise I'll mute my phone for the next bit. But for now, that's that. Alright, and then we also need to do this little bit just here. So we got that there. So now that will fit back on there. Alright, so we can we're not pushing it together, but we can have a look to see roughly what we've got going on here. So we can see that these bits here link with this bit here, so that will look quite nice. And then we've got these metallic jaws coming through. We do have these tentacly bits coming up, and I think they'll look quite nice if they're in a slightly more reddish kind of look going forward. The only thing that leaves me to do is bring this bit in, and remember I said about fleshy bits around here, and this is what it's going to be. So we're going to come in and very carefully, and this is why we haven't painted this bit here, is that we're going to slide the brush down on the inside there, being very careful not to touch the brass that we've got going on in there, but we very carefully just slide the brush down the side there. Alright, so painting over the eye isn't a problem because it hasn't been done yet, and we can just slide into there without too many problems. You may ask, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I just leave all of the silver metallics until afterwards? And that's purely because of that extra coat of wash. It made it much easier to get that extra coat of wash over the larger areas of silver, and then we can just pick out the few bits later on if it's desired. Alright, but that's that there. And just do a little bit on the inside, just in case, because I think it will be seen. It may or may not be seen, but I'll just do a little bit on the inside, it's not a problem. And there we go. Alright, so give the whole thing a once over. Just check that you've got a nice even coat. Do 2 coats if you want. Yeah, it would be ideal if you do 2 coats actually. Rakarth is a base paint, so you don't always need to, but as good old Duncan Rhodes would say, thin your paint and give it 2 thin coats. Alright, so I'm just going to go over a quick once over of this and put it down, and basically just leave it to dry, alright, before moving on to the next bit. Yeah, that'll do. There we go. Right, leave that to dry before moving on. So there we go. So the next step is going to be using Eldar Flesh. Now I've picked this fairly small kind of dry brush for this bit. Picking what size of dry brush can be a little bit of a challenge. You know, the bigger the brush, the easier it is to kind of flick it, because you know you don't have to be as close to the model, and so you know you've got a bit more tolerance than a small dry brush where you have to be kind of careful with your movements, because if you start going, you know, it goes all over the place. However, because of what we're doing here, we're going to be dry brushing up towards the armor plate, so I've used a fairly small one. Does mean you need to be more careful, but it does give you the ability to get nice and close to the to where you've already painted. So we're going to use the Eldar Flesh here, as always with dry brushing. Bit on your brush, and then wipe most of it off. Almost seems like a waste, but never mind. And then what we're going to do is along the skin, we're just going to gradually build up the colours on the high point parts. Alright, so just build this up nice and slowly. Now with this, we're not really going to do a lot. There's just this one little bit down the front here that we're just going to slide the dry brush into. There's not really a lot you can do with the around there, because you can't get the dry brush in there, so we'll leave that for now. We could just do a little bit just there, but I really don't think you're going to notice any dry brushing going on there. Then don't forget, we need to do this bit as well. That is underneath. Oh, let me just wipe that off. And that's underneath just here. Just being careful not to go all over the metal. Just like that. That'll do. And then around the top edge as well. And you can see that you're not going to see any of this because it's yeah, there's no primer on it. which is great. It can be nice and rough around there. And there we go. Now, before I move on to the washing, which will give us a really nice finish to the pale skin, which I've chosen a pale skin due to how dark the green and everything is. I wanted it to contrast with it, so it's a really dark green, but so we've gone with a light colour here. What I want to do is I come in with Balthazar Gold, and what I want to do is before I highlight before I wash the skin, we're just going to come in and paint in these bands that we've missed. So we're going to come along here, and all of these brass bands that we missed, we'll paint those in now. And there we go, I'm happy with that. So, we'll give that a few minutes to dry. It won't take long, to be honest, because it's quite an even, quite a small coat. But while we are waiting for that to dry, I will find myself a even smaller dry brush, which is the Citadel Start brush. And we are going to find Golden Griffin in my paints here. Here we go, Golden Griffin, and we're just going to ever so gently add a small highlight, Golden Griffin, starting from the back here. Just going to go along, just give that an ever so lightly brush. You're not really going to be doing a lot to this colour, so small amount of it, and it's not really the highlight of this area. You know, it's not like you're really trying to grab anybody's attention looking at the banding around the belly of this beast. So we're just ever so gently, just adding, you know, just brushing a little bit over the top. Nothing crazy. In fact, it's so little you hardly see it. But without it, it probably would look a little bit bare. So we're just gonna add a little bit there. And now that's done, we can go into the wash, which we are going to use Reikland Flesh Shade. Alright, and with this we're going to get a reasonably large brush. It's nothing crazy, and then we're going to load that up, and we're ever so gently, because we don't want to start getting this all over the green, in a nice even coat across the entire area that we've just painted. Alright. Forgetting this bit. Just into a decent focus, and we will clear the screen and let the powers of YouTube do its thing. And it looks something like that. Now let's move on to using some Bugman's Glow. And what we're going to be doing with this now is we're going to be picking out the details such as these tentacle bits here. So we're going around picking all of these bits out in a nice thin coat of Bugman's Glow. So we've got the tentacles on the front, they've got some at the back there, and what we also need to do is pick out this at the back on the weapons. So I'll pick out those, and also what we'll be doing is grabbing these ones at the front as well. Alright, so I'll go around. Oh look, let's thin that down a bit before it dries. I will just go around the whole model now, just picking out those parts of the model. I did forget as well, but I want to do the inside of the mouth for this bit as well. So it comes along here. We don't need to worry about catching the metal bits, or the bits that will be metal. So just go along here on the inside of the mouth here, or the inside of the maw. Not forgetting that the other side has been painted, but if we just catch between those teeth there, gives us a nice transition in the colours that are going on there. Gives us a reason as why it's a different colour on the inside than the outside. And then as the metal comes all over that, it'll break the two colours up. Giving it one final look over to make sure I haven't missed any tentacles. I don't think I have, so hopefully we're ready to move on to the next step, which will be a wash, and we're going to thin down some Carroburg Crimson. and we'll thin it down with some Lamia medium. Alright, so I'm going to grab myself a small little well palette going on here. It is a bit dirty. Make sure you got no dust in it, but other than that it's dry, so that's going to not be a problem. So what we're going to do is we start with the Lamia medium first, is you don't want to get the Lamia medium tainted with any paint, so always make sure that the brush that goes into your Lamia medium is a clean one. Whoops. Make sure it's a perfectly clean brush. I'll add a couple of drops of Lamia medium to the palette, and then because this is a medium, it's what paint is made of. Before the colour gets added, by putting this dirty brush into there isn't going to affect the wash at all. So we can now go into here and grab a few drops of this as well. I don't know, I'm not sure, you know, trying to figure out exactly how much you're doing when you're doing it via the brush load is difficult. You can't really tell, but I'm thinning it down, and basically by thinning it down I'm stretching the amount of pigment there is to medium, you know, which is what it's made of. So there's a lot of pigment in here for the amount of wash. So then I've added the amount of liquid but not added this amount of not added any pigment to it, so therefore it's stretching the amount of pigment, so it's lightening it up a little bit. And the reason for that is that I don't want the wash to overpower the Bugman's Glow. You know, I want it to be washed, but I don't want it to, you know, do some major colour changes. And then all we need to do now is just paint over all of the Bugman's Glow with it. So it'll still wash in exactly the same way. It's just a little bit lighter than what it would be if you put straight Caribou Crimson over it. Alright, so nice and carefully, avoiding pooling, but it doesn't really matter because you can catch it up, and if you go over some of it, just kind of dab into it, and you can make it look like, you know, the area around the tubes are blemished a little bit. And the same up here, just, you know, you can let it go in a little bit and it'll help blend the two colours together, but obviously try and avoid it on where it's going into metal. You can blend it when it's going into flesh under here, but not quite so much when it's going onto metal, so try and avoid over painting on these bits. Alright, so we'll go around the rest of the model now. And what we want to do for the inside of the mouth is we're going to go back into the pot here and just use straight up straight up Caribou Crimson, no thinning it down, and that's just going to go straight into the mouth in there. Alright. And even though I keep saying all the time about not letting your wash pool, if it pulls in the center of that mouth there, that really doesn't matter. It's one time where pooling really doesn't matter because it's a deep hole, and you know, theoretically that carries on going into the model, whereas, you know, with plastic it doesn't. So having a nice deep dark color that, you know, looks like it could go on forever, that's actually a good sign. Alright, so we'll just leave that in there like that, and we'll leave that red wash to dry. So moving on from the red, we're going to do exactly the same thing with Druchii Violet. Alright, so we're going to come in with the Lamia medium. and grab our brush and add some drops of that. There we are, and then come in with the Drucci Violet and do the same thing. Add a few drops of that. Somewhere in the region around about 50-50, something like that. There we go, like that. I mean, it looks pretty much the same, but you know, it doesn't dry quite as strong as it would be without the Lamia medium. And then we come in with the same thing. Grab a brush and just lightly coat. We just leave that to dry for a bit and then we can move on to the last bit. Alrighty then, and the next thing we're going to do is grab ourselves some Eldar flesh. Now that that's all dry, grab myself a really tiny little dry brush, and all we're going to do is just excuse me, is just give the areas that we've just done a bit of a dry brush. There we go. Alright, so I'm just going to quickly whack this thing back together again. And there we have it. That is the stage in which we are at. So we got some nice nice looking skin going on there, and all the tentacles and things going on. The next video we will get on with some of these more metallic bits, and possibly depending on how long that takes, we might get the some more of it done as well, but we'll focus on metallics next time, I think. So there we go. So I hope you're enjoying this. It's I'm enjoying doing it anyway. It's certainly fun to paint. You might want to, if you are following along with these videos, is especially on this point at the end of this video, is maybe not put it back together again if you're painting the same model in the same way I am. The next thing I'm going to do, the very first thing I'm going to do in the next video, is pull him apart again, and yeah, the more he comes apart and goes back together again, the more likely it is, one, you might break something, or two, it's just stretching and twisting things. It's not, you know, you don't want to keep pulling that apart. Basically, if you're following along and you're just getting on with it, keep it separate for these videos. Yeah. Other than that, I'd say thank you very much for joining me on this one, and I hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to leave a comment below if you want to say something, if you've got a question, or if you've got a comment to make on how you might do it differently. Don't forget to press the subscribe button, and the bell button next to it if you don't want to miss any of my uploads. Other than that, I say thank you very much for joining me on this one, and I'll catch you in the next one, alright? Ta-ra.